How to buy a car when you move to Australia. If you're interested, keep watching. If you move into Australia, you're probably very aware that this is a massive country and very car dependent. Distances are very long and it's very likely that you'll need to get a car at some point. Having said that, if you live in inner city suburbs, public transport is pretty good, and this includes buses, the train, the tram. So in that case, it's unlikely that you'll need a car to go to work, for example. On the other hand, if you are not car dependent because you live near the city but you do love to travel around, my best recommendation is that in that case to get a hire car, and I talk about all this in another video on how to live cheap here in Australia. There are car companies such as Car Next Door or Go Get where you can hire a car for the weekend or per hour, and that will allow you to not have to incur in costs related to buying and maintaining a car. Now, if you do live in outer suburbs and your workplace is a bit further from your home, then taking public transport might be a bit of a pain, to be honest, and in that case it will be much more convenient for you to buy a car. Also, there are some jobs where employers do require employees to have a car. This could be, for example, for sales jobs where you have to drive around Australia or around the city to do field demonstrations, to do product demonstrations, or for example, if you're a support worker, you might need to drive your client around the city to get to appointments. In that case, you'll probably need to buy a car. And another instance when you might want to have a car is, for example, if you are a backpacker, maybe you want to travel around Australia. What I recommend doing is to get a van. Vans are amazing, and yeah, you can travel around and sleep in your van, and yeah, I think van life is the best way to travel around Australia. Okay, so considering all this, let's get started with my 7-step guide on how to buy a car in Australia and everything that you need to know about costs and what to check for. Let's get started. Step 1, you need to set a budget. Now, if you decided that you want to buy a car, you do need to consider how much you're willing to spend. And of course, this budget is going to define whether you buy a new car or a second-hand car. To give you an idea, the average price in Australia of a new car is around $30,000 Australian dollars. And for used cars, you can expect to pay between $15,000 and $18,000. But everything depends on the characteristics of the car, such as the make, the year. But considering these prices, you can get cars for much cheaper prices. I'll give you an example. I bought a car 2 years ago. It was a 2005 Toyota Corolla, and I didn't want a fancy car because I need to admit that I'm not the best driver. I'm a very I'm not proud of my driving skills. So I didn't want anything fancy, and I wanted to practice, etc. So yeah, I got this car for $6,000, and it was in perfect condition. Of course, it was old, but it did the job. I highly recommend doing a lot of research to get the best deal out there. Step 2, know where you can buy a car here in Australia. Okay, for buying cars, you have two main options. The first one is to go to a dealership, and the second one is to buy a car through a private owner. Dealerships usually sell new and used cars, and private owners usually is used cars only. My best recommendation is to use websites like carsales.com.au. This is not sponsored, but these websites are very comprehensive tools to find the best car because they have lots of filters and they're very well known as well amongst Australians. Another option is to check Facebook Marketplace, for example, but beware of scams. And how do you know if they're scammers? If it looks too good to be true, you probably should be a bit skeptical. So that's an option to consider, but I recommend sticking to reputable, well-known websites such as carsales.com.au or dealerships. Step 3, what to look for when you're buying a car. The first thing that you need to look at is the make of the car, that is the brand, Toyota or Volkswagen. Then you have to look at the kilometers that the car has traveled. And the less kilometers the car has traveled, it's likely that in better condition it will be. Whereas more kilometers, the less the life expectancy of the car will be, basically. Another thing that you should look at is the transmission, whether it is automatic or manual. Something to know is that here in Australia, most cars are automatic, and even when you're hiring cars, usually they're automatic. This is unlike places like in Europe or South America, where usually you get manual cars, or you have to pay a premium for an automatic. It's not so much the case here in Australia. Another thing to consider is the year of the car, the size, whether you want a small car or a big car, the fuel efficiency of the car. I'll show you now on the car sales website how to use these tools. So you are in the main page. So here you have make, You can filter by make, for example, Nissan. So you can choose a model. Don't worry, location is very, very important to set that up. So minimum price, you can set a minimum price or you can set a maximum price. Body type, so you can choose whatever type of car you want. And then you click show me the cars. You'll have a range of different cars to choose from. And here, this is very important. So year, for example, if you have specific years in mind, you can specify that here. This is very important. So this is how many kilometers do you want the car to have. As I said before, I always recommend to buy cars that have less kilometers if you can, but of course the price is going to be a bit higher in that sense, because it means that the car has a greater life expectancy. Then fuel efficiency and transmission, this is automatic or a manual car. And yeah, you filter by those features and you'll get a different selection of cars to choose from. And then once, for example, you're interested in this, here you have the characteristics, you have the description of the car, price rating, and then if you're interested, you click on contact seller. I think you have to create an account here and you arrange a time to organize an inspection. I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but yeah. Something that you should be aware of is that Australia is lagging behind in comparison to other countries a lot in terms of electric cars. It's very, very difficult to get an electric car here at an affordable price. This is a massive policy issue, but I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, it's something that you should be aware of. It's not like in Europe where electric cars are much, much cheaper. Here you have to have a lot of money to be able to access an electric car. Another tip when you are looking for a car is to consider the time of the year. According to some websites such as finder.com.au, the best time of the year here in Australia to buy a car is between May and June, because that's the end of the financial year and that's when dealerships, for example, have a lot of sales and they slash out the cost of the car. So yeah, I guess take that into account when you're in the process of buying. Step 4, inspect the car. Okay, how do you go about inspecting a car? Okay, as I said before, once you found the car that you want to inspect or potentially buy, you need to get in touch with the car owner. And if you're doing this through websites like carsales.com.au, you just contact the seller, you organize the date and time to inspect the car, and usually that's within the same week. You can say, hey, how you going? Can I inspect the car tomorrow at 10 a.m? And you can organize the time with them. Now, once you're there, once you go to your inspection, first of all, bring your ID, because you're going to want to test drive the car. So you're going to leave the ID to the owner whilst you go around the block and you drive the car. Once you have the car there, I want you to inspect the following things. Any damage, chips or scratches in the paint, for example. Check the mirrors and check the paint on the roof as well, and the glass as well, because these are things that are very, very costly to replace. So you want to make sure that all this is in shape. Another very important thing to do when inspecting a car is to ask the owner if the car has been in an accident. This is going to give you as well an understanding of the overall condition of the car, and if the car has been in an accident, you can ask the owner more detailed questions. Another tip is to open all doors and windows and make sure that everything is working. Check the condition as well of the fabric, the seats, the carpets. Look underneath the carpets as well to see that everything is in order. Check all the lights and headlights, make sure that they all work as well. Check all the electronics such as the radio, the air conditioning, the heating, the reverse cameras, the speakers. Check the tires as well, make sure that they're in good condition. For example, I remember when I inspected that Toyota Corolla, we went for a test drive and then we realized that the tires were having some issues. I can't remember exactly the technical thing, but yeah, we talked to the owner and he said, oh yeah, I'll fix that, don't worry. So yeah, that's something to consider. You should also check under the car to see if there's any rust. Realistically though, I know that not many people have knowledge in the mechanics of a car. So if you have a friend who's very knowledgeable or someone who can help you inspect the car properly, bring them along to your inspection, because that's going to make sure that you can cover all bases. And on that note, as I said before, you should always test drive the car, and that means you give your ID to the person and you take the car for a drive around. Something that you should always do before committing to buying a car is to have it inspected mechanically. In some states, especially here in Victoria and New South Wales, I think, you usually get the car inspected and you get a roadworthy certificate, and this certificate guarantees or confirms that the car is safe to drive on the road, that there are not major technical issues. And during that inspection, the mechanic may notice other issues, and then you can negotiate with the car owner to have them fixed before you buy and you give them your money. Usually you'll see in the car ads that the owner clarifies whether the car has a roadworthy certificate or not. Make sure that if they do have one, that it's recent. And if they don't, then you can say, okay, I'll leave you a deposit, I don't know, 10% deposit or 5% deposit, and then you get that roadworthy certificate sorted, and if all good, I'll buy the car. You can organize that mechanical inspection yourself as well with a mechanic around the area, or you can just type in Google pre-purchase car inspection and you'll get lots of different options of mobile mechanics. They go to the place and they inspect it for you and they make sure that everything is fine. I highly recommend doing this. It's going to give you a lot of peace of mind. I know many people who've said, oh no, but the car looks great, and they have this kind of emotional attachment to the car, and they had to sell it right away after 3 months because the car was in very bad condition, like internally. Be mindful of that. Step 5, don't make a decision right away. As I said before, do your mechanical inspection and then go home, think about it and take your time. Of course, if the car is in high demand, make sure that you don't take a lot of time because someone will come inspect it and make an offer and then you lose the deal. But yeah, just have a think, and if you're not super convinced, just move on, keep looking, and you'll be fine. Step 6, consider extra costs. Okay, there are some additional costs that you'll need to consider when buying a car because it's all related to regulations and maintenance. Yeah? Okay, so the first cost that you should consider is motor vehicle stamp duty. This is a type of tax that you pay when you buy a car, whether it is a new one or a second-hand one. If you're buying from a dealership, I think stamp duty is included in the final price, but if you're buying from a private seller, you pay for this after you've transferred ownership. And how much you pay for stamp duty differs from state to state. Another cost that you'll need to consider is the fee for transferring ownership. This costs around 30 Australian dollars. Another ongoing cost that you need to consider is registration or rego. You'll pay for rego every 3, 6 or 12 months, and it's usually between 500 Australian dollars and 800 Australian dollars per year. But this varies according to the state and the type of car that you have. Another cost that you need to consider is the CTP, and this stands for compulsory third-party insurance. The CTP can be bundled with your car registration and they're both paid together. I think you can do this though in New South Wales, so please do your research. And another cost, of course, is fuel, right? Especially if you don't buy an electric car. Step 7, pay for the car. If you're buying from a private seller, you usually pay the car outright, and usually do this via bank transfer. And usually what I found is that you do everything there, like in person, you just do the bank transfer there, but it depends. If you're buying from a dealership, usually you can ask the dealer for different financing options. But bear in mind that, well, this could be a bit more convenient, it could be a bit more expensive, yeah? Buying through a private owner is going to be much cheaper than buying through a dealer. Okay, now, another thing that probably many of you are wondering is whether you can get a car loan, especially if you're a migrant. My understanding is that only Australian citizens and people with permanent residency can apply for a loan, but I highly recommend talking to your bank just in case. Now, if you're already working here in Australia, bear in mind that many employers usually offer employee benefits such as a novated lease, which means that your employer will pay for your car using your salary. And the advantage of this is that you can get a tax benefit. So I highly recommend talking to the HR department and asking if they have a novated lease as an employee benefit. Okay, and something else to consider is that all states are different. All the information that I provided here is standard information and standard practices that you usually do when you buy a car here in Australia. But of course, there are specific regulations and legal matters that differ from state to state. So I highly recommend doing a bit of research to make sure that you're covering all bases. I hope this video is of some help to you. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to keep supporting the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hi, I'm in the process of editing this video on getting a car in Australia, and I realized that I didn't talk about recognizing your international driver's license. This is a pretty important point, so I'll probably make a short video about that, but I don't want to get too much into it because this differs from state to state, right? The whole process. But yeah, I highly recommend bringing your international driver's license, and then I think is after you've lived for 6 months here in Australia, I think you'll have to convert your international driver's license into an Australian one. But again,
again, this depends on your state, so do a bit of research about that, but I'm definitely at some point I'm going to make a video. Okay, bye.